Logical fallacies. We don't realize. Yep, everyone is destined to have their own mind and way of thinking. But it's not uncommon for people to make thinking mistakes, which ultimately make their arguments unbelievable. This kind of thing is commonly called logical fallacy. What is logical fallacy, and what causes it? Now is the right time to find out and understand what logical fallacy means. And let's discuss it in just under 20 minutes. Yep, guys. Have you ever felt that someone's argument sounded very convincing, but you felt that there was something wrong with it? Or maybe you yourself have believed in something with full conviction, only to realize later that there was a logical fallacy in it. I'm sure many of us have been or even are in that position. In this world, there are a lot of thinking errors that we often encounter, whether in debates, the news, or even everyday conversations. But even then, we often don't realize it. In this series, we will start talking about logical fallacies, or thinking errors that can affect the way we understand the world. Listen carefully so that there is no misunderstanding in interpreting this topic. Logical fallacies are not just minor speech errors or problems, but also, in some cases, something that can have a huge impact. For example, in politics, where a candidate can attack his opponent not with facts, but with irrelevant and personal attacks. Or in social media, where hoaxes are often supported by logically weak arguments, which then make the hoax news even more exposed. It often happens because of the ridiculousness of arguments that are not based on clear sources. So let's start by recognizing what logical fallacies are and how they can affect the way we think. A logical fallacy is a thinking error that makes an argument seem true when it is not. We often encounter this in a variety of situations, as I said earlier, from politics and social media, and even worse, to everyday conversations. Of course, there are many types of logical fallacies, and in this episode, we will discuss some of them in more depth, so that we can recognize and avoid them. Let's start with the first one, viz. Strawman fallacy. This fallacy tends to be like a counter-argument, or someone simplifying or twisting an opponent's argument to make it easier to attack. For example, if someone says, "We need to regulate the use of private vehicles to avoid traffic jams," then their opponent replies, "So you want everyone to ride bicycles? That's absurd." In fact, the original argument never said that. It's clear that the first argument is just giving ideas that might be implemented to reduce congestion a little. Up to this point, can you understand this logical fallacy? If so, let's move on to the next type. The next type is called ad hominem logical fallacy. This is when someone attacks an individual's character rather than their argument. For example, in a political debate, someone says, "Don't listen to him, he's not from a top university." In fact, what should be discussed is the content of the argument, not who said it. Surely you are very familiar with this type, because honestly, this logical fallacy is often used as a weapon by someone or an organization. Then there is the appeal to emotion type, where emotions are used to convince someone without strong factual support. For example, in an advertisement about charity that says, "If you don't donate, you don't care about starving children." In fact, the decision to donate should be based on rational consideration, not just guilt. Because in fact, every human being must have a good conscience, even without being forced. Do you agree? Then there is a type called false dilemma. This is when a person is only given two choices, when there are many more possibilities that could also be an alternative to the two main choices. For example, if you don't support this policy, you hate this country. Whereas a person can disagree with certain policies but still love their country, right? As if we are forced to comply with these wishes without being allowed to choose something we believe in. The next logical fallacy is the slippery slope. This is when someone assumes a small action will cause extreme consequences without sufficient evidence. For example, if we let kids play games for an hour a day, they will get addicted and eventually quit school. Without concrete evidence, this is mere speculation. The next type is circular reasoning, when conclusions are used as premises without any additional evidence. For example, he is a trustworthy person because he never lies. In fact, that claim provides no real evidence because we honestly don't know the true nature of each individual. Then there's the bandwagon fallacy, when something is considered true just because a lot of people believe it. For example, many people believe that this myth is true, so it must be true. In fact, truth is not determined by the number of people who believe it, but by the specific evidence that already exists. Post hoc fallacy type, when one assumes an event caused another event just because they happened in sequence. For example, after I brought this talisman, I won the lottery. That means this amulet brings good luck. In fact, the lottery win had nothing to do with the talisman. It was just a coincidental moment that happened in sequence. Then the logical fallacy, commonly called red herring, is when someone diverts the conversation to another irrelevant topic. For example, we need to talk about corruption in government. Then someone replies, "Why are we talking about that?" There are many other problems like garbage on the streets. Instead of answering, he just diverts the topic. This type of thing often happens when we are hanging out with our friends, or when we are hanging out at a coffee shop or something like that. Or do you often do this when you are chatting with your friends? Write in the comments column if you often do it. And the last type, no true Scotsman, or when someone tries to defend a claim by arbitrarily changing the definition. For example, a true coffee lover would never drink instant coffee. If there is someone who loves coffee but also drinks instant coffee, he cannot be ruled out just because the definition is changed. People who often do this type of thing just look to be recognized and considered cool with their habits or choices. By recognizing these logical fallacies, we can be more careful in our thinking and not be easily fooled by arguments that seem convincing but are actually flawed or even deceptive. Then, now that we know some common types of logical fallacies, the next question that arises is, how can we avoid them? Well, so there are some steps we can take to ensure that our thinking is more critical and not easily trapped in logical fallacies. Here, I will provide tips or ways that we can do to avoid logical fallacies that are around us. The first way is to be skeptical, but open. Don't just believe things without any real evidence, but also don't close yourself off to new information. Try to always ask, is this true? What is the evidence? Then secondly, check the source of the information. Make sure the information we receive comes from credible sources. Don't just believe it because it's viral or talked about by many people. Then the third way, separate emotions from facts. Don't let emotions cloud our judgment of an argument. If an argument makes us angry or sad, try asking again, is this supported by facts or just a game of emotions? The fourth is, ask critical questions. Always ask if a given argument has sufficient evidence. If someone says something that sounds convincing, try asking, what is the evidence? Or where did this information come from? This way we can get additional useful information. And the last way is to be aware of your own biases. We all have biases, so it's important to be introspective and open to other points of view. If we disagree with someone, try asking, do I disagree because it's wrong, or just because it goes against my beliefs? By understanding and avoiding logical fallacy, we can become more critical, intelligent, and not easily manipulated by misleading arguments. And more importantly, we will become someone who looks much cooler and smarter than anyone else. Hopefully, after watching this series, You are more sensitive to logical fallacies and can apply them in your daily life. Don't forget to like and comment anything about logical fallacy. Share your experiences in the comments column. Hopefully, in under 20 minutes, it can be useful for a lifetime. See you in the next discussion.